My name is Carolyn Walker. I'm 62 years old, a retired school teacher, and I've been a widow for 7 years. I live alone now in a small, quiet house filled with memories, most of them shaped by the love I poured into raising my only son, David. A few months ago, I gave David and his wife, Melanie, a house, fully paid, no mortgage, no debt. I spent my life savings on it and told myself it was worth it, a gift of love, a solid beginning for their future. I chose to paint colors. I assembled furniture in my garage. I sewed the curtains by hand. It wasn't just a house. It was a piece of me. So when David's message arrived that morning, my hands began to shake in a way they hadn't since the day we buried his father. The message was short. You won't be joining us on the family cruise. Melanie wants to keep it just family. Just family. Somehow, I no longer counted. I sat at the kitchen table, the smell of untouched coffee in the air, and read the words again. My fingers felt stiff and cold as I typed back a single reply. Okay, that one word carried everything, the shock, the hurt, the sudden understanding. I hit send, but inside, something was breaking. I was good enough to buy their house, but not good enough to sit at their table, not good enough to be family. My heart was racing, but my face remained calm. Still, detached. That was the moment something inside me cracked, the part of me that made excuses, that stayed quiet to keep the peace. That part was gone. Sunlight crept across the kitchen floor, touching the chairs I had refinished years ago, the same chairs David once sat on, knees scraped, asking impossible questions about the stars. That little boy was gone. In his place stood a man who had drawn a line I was no longer allowed to cross. My home suddenly felt foreign, like a museum of bad choices. Photos lined the walls, vacations I had paid for. Disneyland when David was 7. Cancun when Melanie first joined the family. A cabin trip one snowy Christmas. They had said money was tight. I had believed them. Now all I saw were receipts framed as memories. I thought about their housewarming party, the one I planned and paid for. Melanie had taken my hands that day, her smile warm, her eyes glossy. Carolyn, you didn't have to do this. You'll always have a room here, and I believed her. Because mothers believe. It's what we do. I remember repainting their bedroom while they were at work. Lavender, because Melanie said it was calming. New curtains, new rugs, new furniture. Every corner of that house carried my fingerprints. I stayed busy so I wouldn't have to face the truth. They didn't call much. They rarely visited. I told myself they were just busy young couples, always are. But that wasn't the truth. The truth was heavier than paint cans and moving boxes. I had made myself so useful that they stopped seeing me as a person. I became the helper, the fixer, the wallet. And once my money was spent, there was little use for the woman attached to it. I had given too much for too long, and quietly I had been erased. The next morning, the silence in the house pressed against my chest. It wasn't peaceful, it was suffocating. I called Nancy. She arrived within the hour, just like she always had, no questions, no hesitation. That's the gift of old friends. They know when to speak and when to simply show up. She took one look at my face and knew. Tell me, she said softly. I slid my phone across the table. Her jaw tightened as she read. She didn't speak right away, just nodded slowly, as if this moment had been inevitable. They've been planning this, Caroline. I shook my head. Maybe it's just Melanie. Maybe she influenced him. David wouldn't do this on his own. Nancy reached across the table and took my hand. You raised a good boy, she said gently. But you also raised a boy who never had to struggle. You were always there, fixing everything. Melanie saw that, and she used it. I looked away. You made yourself small, Nancy continued. And now they're treating you like you belong there. The words hurt because they were true. I had stayed useful so long, I forgot how to be seen. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, Nancy's words echoing in the dark. Something was shifting, and for the first time in a long while, I was ready to be seen again. They had been planning this. At 2:17 a.m., I got out of bed and walked into the kitchen. The house was silent. I opened my laptop, and its pale glow filled the room as I sat down, my fingers resting over the keys. For years, Melanie had handled most of my online accounts. It's easier, she'd say in that sweet, reassuring voice. You shouldn't worry about these things in retirement. And I believed her. I wanted to believe she was helping. I wanted to believe I still mattered. That night, I logged in with clearer eyes. At first, everything looked normal. Checking, savings, retirement, all intact. Nothing obvious. That's how it works. The danger hides inside the ordinary. So I kept digging. That's when I saw the transfers, small amounts, spaced out, carefully labeled, property maintenance, home repair, emergency fund. I hadn't authorized any emergency repairs. I clicked deeper. The destination accounts weren't mine. They were Melanie's. She had added herself as a secondary user quietly, seamlessly. She had been skimming for me, bleeding my account slowly so it wouldn't trigger alarms. This wasn't carelessness. This was theft, dressed up as kindness. And David, was he blind? Or did he simply not care as long as the money kept flowing? I leaned back in my chair, my heart pounding, not with fear, but with something colder, sharper. They weren't planning to hurt me someday. They already were. And they thought I'd never notice, but I had. And I was done staying quiet. By morning, my decision was made. No more silence. No more waiting. It was time to move. I called Mr. Harris, my attorney, the same man who had handled my will, my retirement planning, and the paperwork transferring the house to David and Melanie. He answered immediately. Mrs. Walker, everything all right? No, I said calmly. And that's why I need to see you today. He cleared his schedule. A few hours later, I sat across from him, my hands folded neatly in my lap. I want to reverse the house transfer, I said. Lock down every account. Cancel all powers of attorney. Everyone. He paused, not in doubt, but in understanding. This may cause tension, he said carefully. They already did, I replied. I just didn't see it, he nodded. If you suspect financial abuse, we'll need evidence. I slid a printed spreadsheet across the desk. I have some, and I want more, he raised an eyebrow. Would you consider a private investigator? I won't hesitate, I said. Hire whoever you trust. Then we moved quickly. As I left his office, something shifted inside me. This wasn't just about stopping them anymore. It was about reclaiming myself quietly, methodically, and without warning. That afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table, sunlight warming my face. For the first time in weeks, my hands didn't shake. They thought I'd stay quiet. They thought I was still the woman who signed whatever was put in front of her with a polite smile. That woman was gone. The next morning, I found an envelope slipped under my front door. Plain white, familiar. Melanie always used those. A yellow sticky note was attached, written in her looping handwriting. Just sign whenever you're ready, Mom. It'll make everything easier while we're away. They were already gone off on their cruise, sipping cocktails beneath open skies. This envelope waited patiently on my kitchen counter. Patience is a trap. I opened it slowly. The documents were clean and professional. Routine updates, estate simplifications, authorizations. But as I read line by line, my stomach tightened. Buried deep in the legal language was a new power of attorney. Permanent, irrevocable. It would give Melanie control over everything: my finances, my property, my medical decisions. Even the authority to place me into care without my consent. They weren't waiting for me to grow weak. They were preparing to take everything while I was still alive. This wasn't about inheritance. It was about control. I stared at the papers for a long moment, then slid them back into the envelope. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I stood there, one hand resting on the counter, letting the truth settle into my bones. Then, softly, almost kindly, I spoke to the woman I used to be. You almost signed this, but not today. Today, you saw it. And I would not use this document to surrender. I would use it as evidence. They thought they were 2 steps ahead. But I had just caught up, and I was already turning the tide. By noon, I was back in Mr. Harris's office. There was no small talk this time. He took one look at my face and nodded. They slipped this under my door while they were on a cruise, I said, handing him the envelope. He read in silence. When he reached the clause marked irrevocable, his jaw tightened. This isn't just unethical, he said. It's predatory. If I had signed it, I replied evenly. They could have sold my home, drained my accounts, even committed me without my consent. He studied my face, waiting for fear. It never came. Let's move faster, I said. His expression shifted, concern giving way to respect. The house reversal is already filed. Asset freezes are in motion. The investigator is deep into the audit, he said. Then he tapped the envelope. But this changes things. We'll escalate. No one touches your assets without your signature. I nodded. And we'll draft a protective clause, he continued. If they attempt coercion, we'll present a full timeline of manipulation in court. I leaned back, steady and calm. For the first time in years, I wasn't reacting. I was building. And I was building something they wouldn't see until it stood between us like a wall. When I returned home that afternoon, the house looked the same. But I wasn't. The woman who paid for love had disappeared. In her place stood someone who no longer confused peace with acceptance. Peace comes from boundaries, from knowing your worth. And I was protecting both. 4 days later, their cruise ship docked. I was already there. I parked a block away and watched as David and Melanie pulled into the driveway, sun-kissed, relaxed, luggage piled high. Melanie stepped out first, barking instructions into her phone. David followed, distracted, scrolling as usual. Then they froze. 2 unfamiliar cars sat in the driveway, a moving truck. A young couple laughing with a realtor as boxes were carried inside. David spoke first. Mom? Confusion cracked his voice. Melanie's eyes narrowed. What is this? Who are these people? I stepped forward, calm and unhurried. You won't need to manage anything for me anymore, I said. Her voice sharpened. What does that mean? David looked around, panic rising. Why are people in our house? It isn't your house, I said evenly. Not anymore. Melanie rushed toward me. You can't do this. We're refinancing. We have contracts. I handed David a folder. These are the only contracts that matter. He flipped through the pages, hands shaking. Melanie tore the folder from him, scanning wildly. This won't hold up, she snapped. We were helping you. You'll regret this. I met her gaze. You mean draining my accounts while smiling? Filing authority behind my back? Using my home as collateral while I slept? David whispered. We didn't mean. I raised my hand. No, you didn't mean to get caught. Silence fell sharp and final. I handed Melanie a second folder. If you take me to court, I said calmly, this becomes public record. They went pale. I turned to David, my son. I was your mother, I said quietly. You made me your target. Then I walked away. I didn't look back. I drove home slowly as the sun sank behind the rooftops. My new apartment was modest, no luxury, no excess, but it was mine. I set my phone face down, ignoring David's final message. Regret dressed as apology. I had nothing left to give, and in that emptiness I found something I hadn't felt in years, freedom. They thought I would fall apart without them. The truth was, I had been buried beneath them for far too long. Quiet doesn't mean weak. It means listening. And now I speak only for myself.